Hello and welcome back to the From My Perspective podcast, where I, Jackson McCarty, tell you all the names you need to know in the college football and NFL landscapes that could be changing the football landscape in the very near future. So today we're going to be focusing on something that is ever growing right now. Odds are that this process is not done yet, and that is the realignment of college football. We've seen tons of teams moving around different conferences. It's going to be perhaps the biggest change to football in a while, maybe since the college football playoffs have been implemented, and there's a lot to go over with it. So kind of in this video, I'm going to be talking about one, if I think it's a worthwhile thing to be doing, if I, the good and bad of it, and two, just breaking down the winners and losers from it as well as what's generally going on. So whatever your opinion is on the realignment of college football, feel free to leave it in the comment section below or to send it to my Twitter. Both the From My Perspective Twitter and my personal Twitter will be linked down below. Before we get too far into this, we need to first tell you who all is moving around and what all is happening. The first conference I want to focus on is the AAC. They are losing three teams, Cincinnati, Houston, and UCF. We'll talk about them here in a second. But they're bringing in six new teams: Charlotte, FAU, Rice, North Texas, UTSA, and UAB. That will almost completely redesign what we know as the AAC currently, especially when you lose those three big programs who have been kind of at the forefront of the conference for quite a while. The Big 12 is bringing in UCF, Cincy, and Houston to replace and BYU to replace two outgoing programs in Oklahoma and Texas. They're going to what is considered the most prominent conference, I believe, in most people's eyes. They're going to the SEC, going to be challenging Alabama, Georgia, Texas A&M, teams like that. And we've got two more changes we want to focus on. The Sun Belt is picking up James Madison University, Marshall, Old Dominion University, and Southern Miss. They're losing two schools, but they're not in football, so we're not going to focus on those today. And finally, the Conference USA is bringing in Jacksonville State, Liberty, New Mexico State, and Sam Houston. So basically what this means is that college football as we know it is going by the wayside. You've got what can really be considered a super conference now with the SEC, if it wasn't already, bringing in Oklahoma and Texas, two dynasty schools, and it's to be determined how they're going to fare there. But if you consider the fact that not too long ago they brought in Missouri and Texas A&M, I think that this crop is likely to perform even better than those two did when they moved over. There's a lot of shifting and a lot of changing tides, but there are certainly a few winners from this. Example, SEC. You're getting those powerhouse schools and a couple more blue bloods that really makes things enticing. Maybe my big winner here is James Madison University coming into the FBS. It feels like a really good decision, especially to go into the Sun Belt, because when you look at the top of the conference right now, it's Coastal, it's App State, maybe Arkansas State bounces back. They were abnormally bad last year. Butch Jones did not field a great team last year, but typically they are a very good program. So that'll be interesting to watch. Louisiana was performing well under Billy Napier. You've got to assume they've at least got a year or two of holdover that's going to keep them where they're at. So there's a lot to like here, but I think you can also say the future is uncertain there as well with Jamie Chadwell. Does he stay in Coastal? Does Arkansas State make the rebound? Louisiana, how long can they hold that up now that Napier's gone? App State, I feel like they're still holding over a little bit on the Eli Drinkwitz talent. So you've got an opportunity to really go in and make some noise in a conference that could very well likely become the best FBS or the best group of five conference now with what happened to the AAC. And we'll get to talk about them before too long, believe me. The Big 12. It stings to watch a team or two teams like Oklahoma and Texas walk out the door, but you did a phenomenal job of replenishing the talent. You've got Cincy, you've got UCF, who are rising programs in my eyes. I know Cincy is among the oldest college football programs, but as far as really sustained success, we're seeing it more between when Brian Kelly was there and where Luke Fickell is now. I also think this move could mean Luke Fickell just stays at Cincinnati. He looked like he wanted Notre Dame or he wanted Ohio State. I don't think either one of those jobs are coming open. And now, if you just stay at Cincy, you've got a way better chance of winning a major conference, one that is still talent rich, despite the fact that your two biggest names are leaving. I think you fare quite well there, and I don't know that you really have any questions about prestige anymore, because if you become a perennial Big 12 contender, why? What else are you looking at unless you're getting an Alabama or something of that nature? Uh, the SEC, like I touched on at the very beginning of this, they added those two schools that have always felt more like an SEC program than they ever did a Big 12, at least to me. Whenever I watch football and I think of these premier programs that are in the South or kind of in the middle of the country, I would have considered Oklahoma more of an SEC program than Missouri, especially when they made the jump over, but that's neither here nor there. And sticking with the SEC, you might get more parity from this. We just spent an entire video talking about that, about how the SEC may or may not truly have balance. And maybe with the addition of Oklahoma and Texas, for one, you can help spread out that talent that just went to A&M. For two, you get these massive programs that have such great name value that you're drawing better recruits into the conference, maybe making it a little bit more balanced. I really enjoy what's happening there, but I don't enjoy what's happening for everyone. There are, of course, some losers. For example, the AAC, they got robbed. I mean, plain and simple. And this is not meant to discredit the teams going over there, because they got quite a few, I believe. The Charlotte, FEU, Rice, North Texas, UTSA, UAB. But you're losing three of your big hitters. Granted, you've still got SMU, you've got Memphis, and you've got some other schools in there that can make some noise. But man, you are starting from ground zero again. You just built the AAC up into this, what I was considering to be more of a Power 5 conference at some points in the season than what the Pac 12 was producing last year. I think there's a legitimate argument for that. I was not in love with the Pac 12 by any means last year. The AAC produced a playoff team, and in some respects, I think that your schedule was harder to go through in the AAC. The Pac-12, Mountain West, Big Ten, all sitting there and kind of watching these other people get picked off. Very different than the Sun Belt situation, because the Sun Belt added people, they added more talent, but they didn't lose any of their big hitters. I think Coastal, Arkansas State again, Louisiana, all those teams rather, could have been eligible to go to the AAC. They kept all their guys, and that, while you can say the same about the Pac-12, Mountain West, Big Ten, you didn't add any talent. Sun Belt added talent. They added more people to really come in there and compete. So do you really feel all that confident as a Pac-12 team, especially with Lincoln Riley going in there looking like he could potentially take it over? Do you really think that there's going to be much movement for you from going from bottom to top and it being super impressive? Does the Pac-12 begin to look more like somewhere that you're not going to get a playoff team from very often because the schedule, or do you take the Notre Dame approach with a team like USC or Oregon, where it's like, yeah, sure, their schedule isn't awesome, but they're doing really well? There's a lot of questions for me in that. And then I think the Mountain West probably lost some traction as a group of five school, simply because they didn't move around anything. They didn't really move the needle, and now you got to worry about BYU, who was an independent, but you got to worry about them now getting booked into conference games, and that's not as easy. Like, I know Wyoming plays BYU this year, if I'm not mistaken. Now, is that still as much of an option as it was before? With all these tough schedules, and this is another bad for me because I would like to see more recruitment parity. With all these tough schedules, you're now looking more at location schools, and maybe it doesn't really matter how the team is performing, because you can go out and play great competition, and even if you win 8 games, 7 games, whatever, at least you're getting to live in a nicer location than going kind of in the middle of the country to get that extra win or two. You're going to be able to be seen on TV, especially if you are considering some of these schools like UCF, for example. I think UCF becomes a pretty hot place to go to now, if they weren't already, with Gus Malzahn and everything going on over there. But I think that they get a lot of weight because now that they're moving into the Big 12, you can go live in Central Florida and still play the schedule Oklahoma plays and be seen on TV and do some pretty cool stuff there. I think that kind of takes the power out of, truly needing to find great programs as opposed to great locations with also a good football team. And finally, NIL bidding is really going to skyrocket from this, because now you've got all these talent-dense programs and conferences and what have you. And so you're looking at, realistically, you're going to have to outbid for a player now, almost like NFL free agency. You're staring down the barrel of something that I think was already coming and was going to become a thing anyways. But this has really sped up that process, and to watch it all unfold right in front of us, where you can see realistically that, hey, maybe TCU wants to buy to become the new Big 12 team, or Oklahoma State, or I don't want to say BYU, but these other programs that are really just looking for a leg up. You're just going to start throwing money, and maybe in the form that isn't legal to do so, with NIL funds. So there are plenty on both sides. I do overall think that it is a positive for college football. Again, I think the NIL stuff was coming anyways. You're getting better games, which is obviously the goal. You want to grow the game as much as you can, and whenever you're putting all these dense conferences together, now you're looking at, realistically, a lot more entertainment and a lot more enjoyability just by turning the TV on, going to whatever subscription you have, clicking a random game on a Saturday, and now all of a sudden you're watching two pretty good programs go at it, whereas, maybe you get a little bit more filler in a sense, or you don't get as much balance, and that's really a plus for the Big 12, SEC. I think the Sun Belt, again, I really do like what they did. To keep all your big hitters and still add talent like James Madison University, super impressive on my side of things. I really enjoy that. But as a whole, I do think that it is probably for the best of football. There are some things to be weary of, especially with conferences having to restart, like I mentioned with AAC. So what do you think about the entire process? Do you think it's a good thing for football? Do you think it's too much of a change that it might drive some of those older viewers away? Kind of what are your general feelings about it? I'd love to hear them. But for now, that has been episode 10 of the From My Perspective podcast. And as always, I'll see you next time.